So we are going to talk about the ecoregions of Texas. So ecoregion, what is that? So an ecoregion is a pattern of ecosystems with combinations of soil and landforms that characterize that region. So they've got similar soil, similar landforms that make it more prominent that this region they're all similar. So we've got several different ecoregions of Texas, okay? We've got the rolling plains, high plains, the Trans-Pecos, Llano uplift, the piney woods, blackland prairie, this purple right here, Edwards Plateau, okay, this is pink, coastal sand plain, this little area down here, oak woods, the darker green, South Texas brush country, and the Gulf Coast prairies and marshes. Now, people call these different names. Each map that you look up is going to be different. Not everyone categorizes it the same. So depending on what map you're looking at, it might have different names on here for what they're calling it, but they're all similar. So all of this is going to be similar. All of this area is going to be similar, so forth and so on. So the first one is rolling plains. We're just going to kind of look over these really quickly. Here's rolling plains. They look like rolling plains, like a plane, just this plain old thing there, okay? Next one, high plains. So we've got a little bit of an uplift now, okay? Those are high plains. They're right here, okay, and kind of in the Panhandle, North Texas area. We've got Trans-Pecos. So Trans-Pecos is really West Texas. Got a lot of more deserty plants here. We've got the Llano uplift. It's this little circular, it's kind of the center of Texas almost. And it's characterized by these granite uplifts. There's a really popular state park here in this area of Texas called Enchanted Rock. It's a really awesome place. If you ever feel like going out and adventuring, I definitely suggest going to Enchanted Rock. The next one is Piney Woods, and it's literally like it sounds like it's a piney wood. It's literally a forest of big pine trees. And then the next one is Blackland Prairie. It's this little purple right here, just a prairie really. It's categorized by specific types of grasses. The Edwards Plateau, okay, this is typically what you think of your hill country, is what they call Edwards Plateau. It's got a lot of hills because it's basically a plateau. It's a raised land. We've got our coastal sand plain. It's down here in South Texas. Lots of sandy areas that are really plain. Oak woods and prairies. This section right here, some people call this the Crest Timbers ecoregion. Is categorized by, like it says, oak trees, okay, and it's got some prairies in it as well. And we've got the South Texas brush country. This is categorized by a lot of drought-tolerant plants. This area of Texas does not get a whole lot of rain, so it's typically very dry, does not have a lot of rain there, and so these plants are adapted to living in that area. Gulf Coast prairie and marshes. This is next to the Gulf, like it says. We've got these areas of marshes of water, so these plants are adapted to living in large amounts of water, very humid, and they're adapted to having wind constantly. It's very windy along the Gulf. All right, so that wraps up ecoregion. The next thing we're going to talk about is groundwater and surface water in a watershed. Seems like a mouthful. Let's break that down, okay? Watershed. A watershed is an area of land where all of the groundwater and surface water in the area drains from higher areas to lower areas and into the same body of water. So we've got groundwater is basically what it sounds like. It's water beneath the Earth's surface. And then surface water, like it sounds like, it's water that collects above the surface of the ground. We'll look a little bit into examples of those, but watershed, basically all of an area, particular area that drains into one body of water is called a watershed. Everywhere on Earth is part of some watershed. That's basically all it is, okay? We live in a watershed right now. Your house is in a particular watershed. The school is in a particular watershed. It's just one area of ground. It could be very small, could be very huge. It's one area of ground that all of the water kind of like drains or like goes to one body of water. So all of this water, whenever it rains, all of this water in all of this area is all going to go to the same body of water. Okay, that's a watershed. It's basically what it sounds like. It's where the water sheds across the ground. You kind of think of it that way. So groundwater, like I said, it's the water underground. So there's some specific types of groundwater. The recharge zone is the surface land area where water enters an aquifer. So here's the recharge zone. It's where water is going into an aquifer. So an aquifer is this thing right here. It's a permeable rock layer that can hold or transport water. So an aquifer, permeable just means that water can go through the rock. Okay, that's what permeable means. And so water in an aquifer can it's just an area where water can be transported through, or an aquifer can store water underground. So that's why you hear people of like wells. That's what wells are for. They're getting that water that's stored underneath the ground. Some houses don't get their water from the city. They have their own well system. I'm sure some of y'all's houses have their own well too, especially if you live more out in the country. You're getting your water from an aquifer that's underneath the ground. Some other things are springs, like this. A spring is it's almost like you can think of it, it's like a natural well, okay? It's where the water flows through the aquifer, through the aquifer naturally. Water table, okay, is this right here. It's the highest level of groundwater in an area. It's below the Earth's surface. So water table, so if you've got an area of land that goes beneath the water table, that's where you can get surface water built up, like a lake or maybe the ocean as well. Okay, so water table is the highest level of groundwater in an area. So water table is the highest level of water that's under the ground in an area. Okay, so that's groundwater. Just think of it, water in the ground is basically what it means. Surface water, these are things that are all above the ground. So we've got rivers, we've got streams, we've got ponds, we've got lakes, gulfs, wetlands. It's any body of water that's above the ground. So surface, it's on the surface of the land, hence surface water. This is water that you can see without having to dig underground. Okay, so humans can have a big impact on water and watersheds and groundwater and surface water. So there's this thing called water pollution. So because of a watershed, remember, if it rains somewhere, that water is going to drain off to one body of water. So if you've got a place where pollution is happening, that pollution can actually be transported by that water. Okay, so some possible effects of pollution could be runoff. Okay, it's that runoff, either some kind of fertilizer has some kind of harmful chemicals in it, that when it runs off of this land, when it rains, okay, that water is carrying that pollution, that harmful chemicals into a body of water. And so it can be harmful to some fish. It could be harmful to some water plants as well. It can cause destroyed habitats. And so you may think, well, a little bit of fertilizer is not that bad. Well, when you have a lot in a certain place, manure in some situations can also be pollution, and some soil from bigger cities, okay? All of that together can add up to a big problem. Makes it rough to find more fish. Maybe all the fish have to die. It destroys habitats. It makes unpleasant views. And so humans have to be careful about where they are using fertilizer. They have to make sure it's not going to run off into a lake that is that humans need, or where there's a lot of life there. You have to make sure that you are controlling the pollution that you need. Okay, so Humans can have a big effect on watershed. That water is going to shed off into a body of water, and if it's running across an area of land that has pollution on it, maybe trash, it doesn't have to just be harmful chemicals, maybe trash as well, it's going to carry that along to that big body of water. All right, so that wraps this up for today. We talked about ecoregions, and then we talked about watershed, groundwater, and surface water.